Welcome back to the High-North Dialogue 2021 and good afternoon. It's great that you are joining us for the afternoon sessions. I know it's a long day already. We started very early, got up even earlier, but now it becomes juicy. So stay tuned and stay with us as we will discuss the role of Arctic cooperation. First, in a panel with input from the Norwegian and the Icelandic Minister of Foreign Affairs, as well as with the senior Arctic official from Russia. And this will then later on be followed with our well-beloved and high-level ambassadors panel. But first, we'll kick off our broader view on circumpolar Arctic cooperation from here in Bude to Alaska and via Russia, coming back to Norway. Before turning, though, to our live panel to talk about successes and challenges when it comes to Arctic cooperation, we are happy to start with some pre-recorded greetings made for the High-North Dialogue 2021. Our first clip is from the Arctic Council. The Arctic Council has just been celebrating 25 years of Arctic cooperation, ranging from sustainable development to climate change. After this video, we'll turn to a short speech from the Foreign Minister of Norway, Ina Marie Eriksen Søreide. She will reflect on some of the questions. We'll also tune in on the live panel, talking about Arctic cooperation, success stories, and next steps that we need to take. And finally, we're happy to share with you some greetings from Iceland and from the Foreign Minister of Iceland, Gudlaugur Thor Thordarson. Hope that was correct. His country is currently concluding the chairmanship of the Arctic Council and will be hosting their ministerial meeting in a few weeks from now. And only after all these videos, please welcome them our moderator of today's session, research professor from the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs, Elana Wilson-Rowe. But first, some videos, and afterwards, Elana will greet you digitally from Oslo.
The Arctic Council has played a major role when it comes to the Arctic for the last 25 years, and it's getting more and more important.
From outside, we were maybe considered as a little awkward group of people with genuine interest in the Arctic.
Of course, we should pay tribute to our ministers, to our leaders who took the decision at that particular time to create this organization, which I think has turned into one of the most successful international body.
The Council has evolved greatly, and it has addressed some very critical issues like climate change, like development issues.
I would have never expected that we succeeded to get the message out in such a way that so many people are now turning their interest to the Arctic and raising concerns about the Arctic.
The Arctic Council is the central engine that keeps on advancing knowledge of the region.
I do think the Arctic Council has been very successful in establishing a space where there's enough trust that we can engage openly in conversations that are really important to the future for all of us.
It's formed in a way that we can really focus on these important things like sustainability, environmental protection, and other things that the Arctic states and the observers agree on.
In fact, one of the biggest things that have happened, I think, is the fact that they now sign treaties. There are 3 international treaties that have been signed by the Arctic Council states.
We literally landed on the ice at the geographic North Pole, and we stood together as a group of 8 countries on top of the world in peace.
Good afternoon. Let's start by thanking the organizers of the High-North Dialogue, the High-North Center at University for their invitation to join you today. This conference will provide useful insights to the ongoing discussions on the Arctic. And this year's focus on the perspectives of young people is very fitting. The Arctic continues to be the Norwegian government's top strategic priority. A well-functioning legal regime, dialogue and practical cooperation are essential to ensuring that the Arctic remains a region of stability, predictability and low tension. The Arctic Council contributes significantly to stability in the North. For 25 years, the Council has been instrumental in setting the Arctic agenda and encouraging scientific advancement in important areas such as climate change and sustainable development in the region. The close constructive cooperation between the member states, the permanent participants, observers, and within the working groups has produced tangible results and built trust across our borders for a quarter of a century. I look forward to the ministerial meeting in May, and the meeting will mark the end of a successful Icelandic chairmanship and the start of continued cooperation with the incoming Russian chairmanship. Another important platform for dialogue and stability in the Arctic is the Barents Cooperation. As chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Council until October of this year, Norway has continued to expand the many opportunities in the Barents region has to offer. We have worked to maintain a strong and viable Barents region by focusing on health, people-to-people contact, and knowledge and innovation. Cross-border contacts in the region are vital to maintaining and further developing ties and practical cooperation with Russia in the north. Counties, municipalities, and a wide range of actors on both sides are making invaluable contributions. Last November, the Norwegian government presented a new white paper on Arctic policy. It addresses the broader international picture in the Arctic and Norway's relations with neighboring countries in the Barents region. At the core of our policy is the need to promote a strong, prosperous North where people live, work, and thrive, where innovation, knowledge, and new opportunities make people, and especially young people, want to stay. This is important in both an economic and a security perspective. The government set up a youth panel in connection with the preparation of the white paper. 50 young people provided us with valuable input and recommendations. Their participation has actually attracted widespread interest from other countries looking to do something similar, and we will continue to communicate their experience and their expertise and advice internationally. The participation of young people, both as panelists and in the audience at this conference, clearly illustrates that the youth perspective has already become an integral part of the high-level dialogue on the Arctic. I wish you every success with your discussions.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to have been asked to address you here today at the annual High North Dialogue, even though only via video message this time, as we continue to battle the COVID-19 pandemic, which unfortunately caused the cancellation of last year's event. Now a year has gone by, and I would like to think that we in the Arctic region have adapted quite quickly to a changed world, as this year's conference shows, with participants based across the region with vast distances, borders, and even oceans between us. The adaptation abilities and the resilience of the Arctic people should come as no surprise to anyone, as we have battled extreme weather, isolation, and epidemics in the past. Due to long distances and often lack of transport, many Arctic inhabitants were already proficient users of online meeting formats before the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, one might say that the pandemic has brought about new opportunities for many of these communities, especially when it comes to drawing attention to connectivity or the lack of it. It is important to improve connectivity so that the people in the Arctic can better participate in events, communicate and work on a global scale despite their isolation. That has certainly been proven to be true in the past year. In addition to that, the pandemic has highlighted the existing good collaboration and cooperation between the Arctic states, not just when times are good, but during a crisis as well. Cooperation of the Arctic state is immensely important for the region, as we battle the increasing effects of climate change in the Arctic Our cooperation and collaboration is not just important, but necessary. With the region warming at more than 2 to 3 times the global rate, melting glaciers and acidification of Arctic seawater, we need to listen to our experts and scientists so that we can continue to live and prosper in a sustainable way in the magnificent Arctic. We owe it to our youth to secure and safeguard the Arctic environment and Arctic livelihoods so that they can enjoy a future in the region we all care so much about. However, it is not just climate issues that need our cooperation and attention. In recent years, the Arctic has become the focus point for the international community, attracting attentions from all over the world. All are eagerly looking north to see what the future might bring for the Arctic, as development and environmental changes in the region will affect not only the Arctic population, but a much bigger community worldwide. The Arctic is interlinked with the rest of the world, and therefore we, its inhabitants, are dependent on peaceful and close collaboration that stretches across borders. Greater cooperation in the Arctic should therefore be at the forefront for us, as we better realize the ever-growing opportunities that lie in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, Iceland has chaired the Arctic Council for the past 2 years now, and we are getting ready to hand the chairmanship gavel over to Russia at the ministerial meeting in Reykjavik next month. I think it's fair to say that it has been both exciting and challenging chairing the Arctic Council during a global pandemic. One of the advantages has of course been the reduced carbon footprint of the Council meetings during our chairmanship. Nonetheless, we would have of course liked to host more of our events and meetings on site and in person. However, most of our chairmanship projects are on track, and the few delayed will mostly be completed or continued under the incoming Russian chairmanship. I think a lot can be learned from our time in the chairmanship seat during these challenging times. One thing definitely is best practices for online cooperation and participation in meetings, which will no doubt continue to serve the Arctic Council going forward in a changing world. I believe that it is paramount that we continue to use the platform the Arctic Council has given us, both online and in person, to continue our good and important cooperation in the Arctic so future generations may enjoy a prosperous, sustainable future in our beautiful region in the north. I hope you enjoy a fruitful dialogue here today on Arctic development and cooperation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be moderating this section on Arctic governance and cooperation. As Andreas mentioned at the start, my name is Alana Wilson-Rove, and I'm a research professor at NUPI and also adjunct professor in Bodø. I wish I could be joining you there, but I am joining from the Oslo area. A very special greeting to my amazing students from the course Geopolitics of Energy. This part of the session has 2 parts. The first part is a short speech and a question and answer with Russia's ambassador at large for Arctic affairs, Nikolai Korchinov. Please send your questions in on the usual platform underway. As we've heard from many of the previous video greetings, Russia is about to assume chairmanship of the Arctic Council. So this chance to hear from their senior Arctic official about governance in a changing Arctic is very timely. The second part is a panel discussion with an exciting group of speakers representing different actor groups in Arctic governance. More on this wonderful panel after the question and answer session with Ambassador Korchinov concludes. With no further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Nikolai Korchinov for his brief address, and we look forward to your questions. Ambassador Korchinov, please.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear friends, best Nordbu, great pleasure to join the High-North dialogue for me, and I highly appreciate the opportunity to contribute with my thoughts and with share with you our understanding of the current situation in the Arctic and what and how it evolves. The current trends indicate the increasing role of the Arctic in world politics and the economy. As other regions of the world, it's transiting to digital economy. All Arctic states, being within the group of most developed countries, are entering the fourth industrial revolution. This is a time of innovation, paving the way to the transition to a fully automatic manufacturing and digital platform network applicable in all spheres of the life, controlled by intelligent systems in real life. A new type of society building is based on such end-to-end technologies as AI, smart grids, robotics, the Internet of Things and services, big data and blockchain. It will boost the development of the Northern Territories' infrastructural systems, contributing to higher living standards for the Arctic inhabitants. Russia is open and keen on the intensification and exchange of breakthrough technologies in order to provide viable solutions for the social economic needs of the Arctic region. Smart waste management, smart roads and cities, IT GPS monitoring, including reindeer husbandry, remote real-time operation of oil and gas platform, and etc. Therefore, we always stress the importance of regional cooperation. It remains an indispensable channel of a dialogue with our northern partners, allowing for discussion of common interests in high latitudes and a business-like and constructive manner. Barents region is one of the main drivers of the Arctic development. Barents cooperation is a good example of a fruitful dialogue as the north of Europe. It's important that that direction here continues to develop this way. International cooperation here is facilitated by the traditions of mutual assistance and good neighborly relations, which have developed naturally in the Barents region. It's also an unprecedented level of cross-border interaction in a modern Europe. I would also like to stress the importance of the competitiveness of the region in the world participation of the trade and economy. This May, Russia will take over the chairmanship in the Arctic Council. As a chair, Russia will strive to further strengthen cooperation in the Arctic, consolidate the Arctic states' efforts around agreed long-term goals, and seek common solutions to the modern challenges. The Russian chairmanship will be aimed both at ensuring succession in the role and at further development of cooperation on various topics in the interest of all Arctic inhabitants, including indigenous peoples. The program of the Russian chairmanship reflects the vital issues of the Arctic and focus on sustainable development, balanced environmentally, economically, and socially. We proceed from the understanding that the task to improve the quality of life and living conditions of the Arctic inhabitants, the need of adapt life and settlements and livelihoods to climate change, the preservation of biodiversity, the economic development of the region together with the development of economic projects, tourism and trade all require collective efforts of all Arctic Council member states. We recognize the important role of young people in the development of the Northern Territories. Future generations will have to take the responsibility and a direct part in Arctic construction using the technologies of the near future. We stand for promotion of youth cooperation across the borders, which is given special attention in the program of the Russian chairmanship in the Arctic Council. I would also like to stress the enormous role of the Arctic region in transition towards a climate neutral and carbon-free economy. Arctic is not only a huge treasury trove of hydrocarbon resources like LNG, which is in a great demand due to energy transition goals, but also minerals and metals for low carbon future and technologies, including rare earth metals and transport and energy solutions. During the chairmanship, Russia will focus on promoting sustainable development of the region with the emphasis on socio-economic issues, including creation of favorable conditions for improving of living standards of the Arctic population, modernization of the economy, ensuring the region's competitiveness and investment attractiveness while making rational use of scientific, innovative and resource potential. We are sure that sustainable development is a right policy to address these issues. The development of the northern territories and the improvement of standard of living of the Arctic population are tied directly to the development of the Arctic maritime, including maritime routes, as Northern Sea Route, for example. First of all, in regard to the implementation of tasks aimed to ensure transport, accessibility and connectivity in the region and development of the infrastructure. The Arctic for us is a region with a great potential. That is the territory of breakthrough ideas, collective efforts, innovative solutions that would benefit all mankind. It is a land of peace and great opportunities, and it should remain as such even in the future to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Korchinov, for those remarks. We've received a few questions from the audience, which I think we'll turn to first. The first one is asking about the intersection of different governance settings. So I read, could you talk about the interaction between, for example, the Barents Euro-Arctic Council and the Arctic Council? How does participation in these multiple forums differ, and how do they interact? And perhaps we could also add in, as you were speaking about the maritime dimension at the end, also about international law of the sea and maritime rules, as you mentioned. Do you see these as pulling in one direction, or are they kind of different agendas?
Oh, thank you so much. I think that the first question is very relevant to in terms of the seeking and finding the right synergy between the formats and structures operating in the High North. And the synergy between the Barents Arctic Council and the Arctic Council is obvious, because there are a lot of topics which are being on the agenda of both organizations, and we are very supportive to the ideas to how we could, in a mutually assisting way, in a way of the rational addressing the issues on the agenda, could multiply our efforts and the efforts of both organization in this regard. As for the shipping in High North, of course, we highly support the implementation and respect of the International Convention of the law and other relevant laws and norms with regards to shipping. And we, during our chairmanship, will enhance our attention to the implementation of the Polar Court as one of the most important instruments in terms of providing the safety navigation in High North.
Thank you for that. And we received another question from the audience. Here, someone notes that a student in a previous panel said today, "We are all Arctic states in the time of climate change." Would you agree? And how do you view the role of non-Arctic states in addressing climate change in the Arctic? So the quotation kind of underlines the fact that climate change is a collective global problem. And does that mean that non-Arctic states should be thinking about their role in Arctic governance, or what they can do for the Arctic in new ways?
The problem with the speed warming of the Arctic, the warming which is faster than at average in the world, it is not the consequence of the activities of the Arctic states. That is not coming from the Arctic. That is coming from the rest of the world, and with the projections on the Arctic. And Arctic this is one of the badly hit regions. And of course, the climate change issue needs which is global by its character, needs the global response. And the non-Arctic states' role in that is, of course, one of the most important ones. That is only through the collective efforts we could address that issue in an effective and efficient way.
Thank you. And then we have time for two last questions. I'll give them to you both at the same time so that you can answer. One relates to this, it's a longer one, I'm going to summarize, about the need to be sensitive to cultures and needs of indigenous peoples. And this question asker says that they are concerned about some curtailment of cooperation between Russian indigenous groups and Sami and Inuit populations, and continues to ask, how will Russia work to rectify this reputation and create an indigenous positive environment of the Arctic Council during its chairmanship? And this final question we have is also about forums and change, and it relates to strengthening cooperation with the Arctic Economic Council. What does Russia say?
Yeah, first of all, we consider the indigenous people as justified and equal participants of the Arctic Council. And Russia, we support the participation of the RICON, that is the Association of the Russian indigenous people of the High North and Siberian and Far East in the Arctic Council. And we attach great importance to it. That is true. The second is that we, at the recent time in my own country, make a lot in terms of seeking the solutions and mitigate the concern of the indigenous people, which is arriving with the economic activities. For that, last year, the standard of responsibility of the businesses and corporations towards the indigenous people were adopted in Russia. That is a good example how we could accommodate their interests and the rights of indigenous people in the process of the development in High North first. The second, we submitted to the Sustainable Development Working Group of the Arctic Council a number of the projects directly meeting the interests of indigenous people. One of them is the project on supporting through the digitalization of the cultural and linguistic heritage and linguistic languages of the indigenous people of the North Indigenous people, children of the Arctic, and other project indications, both within the education sphere. That is the topical issue in light of the forthcoming UN proclaimed decade of the indigenous languages starting next year. And we would like during our chairmanship to have the dialogue on the interaction between the indigenous peoples and the economic operators, dialogue how we would like to explore the ways to establish the private-state partnership in the interest of indigenous people. So we have very ambitious plans in this regard, and we are not satisfied with the current state of play, and we consider that a lot could be done in terms of improving this current situation. As for the Arctic Economic Council, I consider that this institution, which was established through the bottom-down approach is not up to the challenge of and not up to the current and anticipated sustainable economic development. That is not so active, not so efficient tool in this regard. And during our chairmanship, we would like to give the impetus to reinvigorate the activities of the Arctic Economic Council in this regard, and we have the plan to organize several events like Energy Summit, Telecommunications Summit, the conference on shipbuilding and construction in High North, the conference on the safety navigation there, and we would like to discuss the businesses and role of the businesses in the development of the Arctic and their responsibilities there, and also in our plan to host the meeting of Regional Chamber of Commerce. That will be the first ever such event where the Chamber of Commerce of all Arctic regions could participate and share their ideas how to promote the interests of the businesses, what should be done, what are the barriers and things like that, because we consider that we have a great number of corporations, big businesses, but unfortunately low and small and medium-sized businesses still are under pressure, and we should find the right way to support that. And another very important to our mind topic in terms of the economic activities is that it is the necessity to support the livelihoods and traditional craft of indigenous people, because to make the products they are produced have the biggest or the largest possible added value, to help them to write their fair place on the market. So that, of course, will which we will focus. We know quite well that the frictions with the indigenous people occurring not only in Russia but in other countries as well. That is the normal. That is the normal situation. Abnormal is that it is not addressed. So we are open in this regard, and would like to have the fair and spread dialogue with our partners within the Arctic Council. Thank you so much. I talk too much.
Well, thank you for joining us today at High North Dialogue, Ambassador Korchinov, and for those comments and for your comments also on improving the state of play on important issues. We look forward to continuing to discuss similar themes with the panel. Thank you for your time. Thank you. So, as you've heard in many panels prior to this, the Arctic is indeed rapidly changing and is under a number of natural and political stressors. In this panel, the focus is on what cooperation has done and can do to help address Arctic challenges and opportunities. And we are so lucky to have a wonderful group of speakers today that will allow us to continue on some of the themes, or maybe even raise questions on some of the statements we've heard earlier about the intersection of politics, society, environment in Arctic governance. So there's no way of ordering among such a great roster of speakers. So I took the coward's way and am going alphabetically. And as I introduce you, I would appreciate maybe if we also, I'll introduce you and then you can comment briefly on the first question, sharing your ideas about what you see as the primary success story in Arctic cooperation. Are there any challenges? And what might get in the way of continued success? So we'll turn first to Anu Frederiksen, who is Executive Director of Arctic Frontiers and formerly the first director of the Arctic Economic Council. So someone who's followed Arctic governance and cooperation close up for many years now, originally from Oulu, Finland. Anu, do you have any immediate reactions to the first question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, definitely. The way I see the Arctic collaboration is that actually the start, the establishment, and the continued development of Arctic collaboration is really the primary success story. We often take it for granted but it is something that is result of hard work and also of a strong will to collaborate throughout the years. And it's something that's built upon a common set of interests. It started with environmental collaboration and the need to develop the socioeconomic living conditions in the Arctic. But it's also based on the realization that the northern parts of our countries actually have a lot more in common with their neighbors than what they sometimes might have with the southern parts of their countries. But the Arctic collaboration, one great feature of it is that it's actually dynamic. It's not a dinosaur. It evolves throughout the time. The work of the Arctic Council has resulted in 3 legally binding agreements. They have called upon the universities across the Pan-Arctic region to collaborate under the umbrella of University of the Arctic. And the Arctic Council has also been able to address the growing business need towards the Arctic by facilitating the establishment of Arctic Economic Council back in 2014. Of course, this is a type of a collaboration which is completely not without challenges, and as has been mentioned quite a few times already throughout the conference, one of the greatest challenges perhaps comes from spillover effects of conflicts outside the Arctic. But at the same time, I still remain optimist. Because how many other international organs are there where 7 out of the 8 countries have issued sanctions on the 8th, and still all these stakeholders are able to summon, to discuss and work for the improvement of common issues. So this, I think, is a true sign of the Arctic exceptionalism. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. And we'll now turn to my companion here in digital space. I'm so glad that we're joined by Olga Nikolaeva from Yakutsk, the capital of the Republic of Sakha, who has a scholarly background in law and has represented Raipan, the Indigenous Peoples Organization of the North, and her Evenk people at summits from the Youth Arctic Summit, at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and also at the UN climate negotiations. Olga Nikolaeva, we're so glad you're joining us. Would you like to share a few reflections on successes in Arctic cooperation?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank for amazing introduction and for inviting me on this panel. And I would like to start with saying that the Arctic is actually the territory of the peace and cooperation. And the work of the Arctic Council shows us that it's been working for at least the past 25 years now. So, and it's a very, it's important to also consider the wisdom of our ancestors of indigenous peoples. And it's really like the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples is one of the keys in assessment of territories in different directions. So I would say that, of course, there are more ways to develop our cooperation, especially between young people. So, and we prefer to, we just not to talk about a lot, just start working. And also, if I will have chance, I would also like to share more about the work of youth network of permanent participants in the Arctic Council.
Absolutely. We look forward to coming back to that. Thank you. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Ksenia Onofrienko, who is representing the Student Partnership Program that we've heard about so much yesterday, and we saw so many of them present today in their scenarios from the cooperation between Nord University and GIMO and ECNU. She is one of my students as well, so I'm extra glad to see her selected to participate in the panel. And she is also bringing a background in legal studies. Ksenia, would you like to say some opening remarks for your participation here in the panel?
Yes, thank you very much. It is my honor to present the youth perspective on Arctic cooperation today. And as we know, people and communities of the Arctic is one of the main priorities within this cooperation. And even though I'm not a local or an inhabitant of Arctic usually, for today I could be called a result of such mutual cooperation. I'm an exchange student here, and I would like to point out the educational differences I noticed during my stay here. I would say that Norwegian high education provides the students with more freedom of choice, and it is usually the result of mature decision-making process, and it is as well more practically oriented, and the students explore the present looking into the future. Unfortunately, I didn't get to participate in many cultural activities thanks to Corona, but anyway, I had a great focus on nature here, and I explored some of it, and I would like to say that maybe providing better infrastructure for exploration by public transport could be one of the factors that will attract and keep the youth here in this region, because it has so many overwhelmingly beautiful places that are worth seeing once in a lifetime. And I'm looking forward to our future discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ksenia. And I feel like every resident of Buda, including the mayor, probably melted hearing you speak so kindly about the lovely nature that surrounds that wonderful city. So that's a perfect segue over to our last but not least by any means panelist, who is Ida Maria Pinnerød, who has been mayor of Buda, that beautiful city, since 2015 and winning a new term in 2019. She's led a very exciting period for this city, I think also including days that have been far too exciting of late with the COVID-19 pandemic, which is luckily we're coming on the other side of it. And she's also been involved in Arctic City cooperation, which I hope we hear a bit more about. But Ida Maria Pinnerød, would you like to share some thoughts on that first theme?
Yes, thank you so much, Elena, and thank you for coming here. In 2017, in May, I was together with mayors from the Arctic countries in Fairbanks, Alaska, and we started the work with the Arctic Mayors Forum. As mayors, our most important mission is to create good lives and societies for the people living in our municipalities or visiting us. The best way to accomplish this is engaging in open dialogue with our inhabitants, reflect, educate, and act. However, our responsibility goes beyond that of individuals. We also have the great responsibility to take care of our communities and build a sustainable future for those who are coming after us. In the High North, we share common and unique possibilities for further development. Even though we keep on being tested by harsh living conditions and climate change, for example, our part of the world still remains as the most peaceful part of the globe. As decision makers in the North, we shall share the responsibility for the future of our region. And in my opinion, development, dialogue, and cooperation are three pillars in our common efforts. When we build the communities for the future, we must do it in a smart way. How we live, move, and meet each other will prove even more important when facing the big challenges with regards to climate change or pandemic, as we have seen the last year. Sustainability has to be number one when we develop the pre-existing strategic natural advantages we have and create new jobs in, for example, industry, energy, and seafood. How can we manage the High North in line with the expectation of the people while also responding to the expectations of the global society? To accomplish success in developing local communities in the High North in accordance with our shared values and goals, dialogue is vital. And therefore, this dialogue, the High North dialogue, is really important. And the last pillar is cooperation. Meetings, cultural exchange, and dialogue to take us further. And while working with Bodø 2024, the European Capital of Culture, Bodø 2024, it's in English, we used to say when people meet, magic thing can happen. And now we know that magic thing also can happen when we meet in the digital rooms. But I know that if you had been here today in the beautiful sun of Bodø in April, we would maybe have taken even further steps forward. I'm sure that Arctic cooperation has to be developed also with the people living in the Arctic, and the local and regional perspective has to be included in the Arctic dialogues. And this is what we as Arctic mayors are working for. And actually during the pandemic situation, we have had 3 meetings exchanging knowledge about how we work in our societies in the Arctic, far from the capitals, but still having very similar things to deal with, and it has been really fruitful. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I think now we'll turn to this, delve a bit further into this question of the future, as the scenario exercises presented by the students this morning set us up so perfectly to do. And I think I'll turn first to my companion in digital space here, to Olga Nikolaeva. And Olga, what do you we have Arctic cooperation today, many aspects of it work, but we never want to be too content. To meet new challenges, probably change is needed. Are there any overlooked or new areas of cooperation that we should be thinking to include towards 2030? Or are there groups or sectors that need to be better included in Arctic cooperation, from your perspective?
Thank you for the question. Of course, we do have lots of other ways to develop our cooperation. For example, the pandemic years showed us that, unfortunately, not all the indigenous communities and peoples living in the Arctic, and not only in the Arctic, but in the remote areas, they don't really have the access to internet connection. And this basically cut them off from all the digital processes that's going on. And that's why we are trying to, we as a Russian Association of Indigenous Peoples of the North, the public organization, we're trying to provide as much, we're trying to provide the voice of our indigenous peoples through the regional centers. And it doesn't work all the time, unfortunately. So this is one of the things that we should decide and solve on the governmental level, because of the digital difference between the big cities and rural areas.
That's a wonderful, important observation about how to include many voices moving forward when you have the representation at the international level. I think we'll turn now to the rest of the panel gathered in Bodø with this question of the future, and perhaps give the word to Ksenia first. And Ksenia, you've also received a question via the chat about your reflections on traveling in the Arctic, and they wondered also in your reflections on the future if you had any ideas about how tourism could be further used to promote Arctic cooperation.
I think that youth cooperation in Arctic region is pretty ongoing. We can talk about IALU projects and their results. The food book written by a group of Pan-Arctic youth has won the first prize on a worldwide level in 2017. We can talk about establishing the food innovation leadership course at North University thanks to this initiative, and also many new ideas for startups connected in particular with fish skin, salmon skin. Also in Bodø there is such startup called Studio EBN. So I think this is the priority. These are the priority areas for the cooperation. But as for the tourism, I would say that probably it is what is meant here is local tourism, and for it to be accessible also in times of corona, in times of pandemic, the public transportation system maybe should be extended, because it could be quite challenging to go to Miele, for example, here if you don't own a private car. Yes, but otherwise, I think that there are already many perfectly accommodated places for the local tourism. Like in Salzstraumen, this is the platform where everything already exists, so people only need to come here. So yes, I think this is the area that could be developed in the future.
Thank you. I'll now turn also, perhaps we could pick up on that with a perspective from Buda, and if Mayor Ida Pinnerud would like to say a few thoughts on the future, perhaps maybe delving into, that cities have not been they've been a growing part of Arctic governance, but what direction do you see this kind of coalition of Arctic mayors taking in the next 10 years? What do you think could be some of the primary areas of future cooperation?
I hope really that we can cooperate more about these questions that both Sinia and Olga has been speaking about. First to Sinia, I think that we have to bring the students and the youth together and to meet and to bring us forward in a dialogue between them. I think that's very important, and I think that the Arctic mayors have a what can I say? We have a role in doing that. For example, the youth councils in the cities. I know more cities are establishing youth councils. Maybe they can meet and that we can start that way. And also the students and what is going on in the universities is of course important, but maybe even earlier. And also this question about internet access has been one of the questions that we with the Arctic mayors have been discussing, as well as infrastructure in general. It's a important case for us. So, but I think that if we can do something to make the young people, the students and the pupils maybe meeting, both digital but also physical, coming to each other, seeing each other, I think we can make a lot together forward.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to come now to the Arctic Frontiers Director, Anu Frederiksen. Could you reflect a bit on the future? Perhaps also specifically, we received a question in the chat about Arctic Frontiers. How do you see that forum developing in the next 10 years? And also, if I can add in and weave in this other question that came in, also about the role of non-Arctic states. Because a panelist this morning said that the Arctic is often not on the radar of global leaders, and maybe that is a good thing. And so one of the audiences were wondering if you agree, or how to manage that increased interest in the Arctic region from non-Arctic states, if you would like to. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Those were two excellent and quite broad questions. Short answers. Arctic Frontiers in 10 years. We want to be a part of this inclusive Arctic, which includes which is an arena for dialogue for all stakeholders, policy decision makers, scientists, businesses, not just from the Arctic, but from across the world, because we believe that the Arctic, while the sovereignty is in the hands of the Arctic states, it is important to be inclusive. At the AEC, they often say business knows no borders, and therefore we need to be able to also interact with the world outside of the Arctic. The inclusion of non-Arctic states is definitely something that is important to tackle in the future. I was really pleased to notice yesterday that the Icelandic Chairmanship of Arctic Council hosted an event for Arctic Council observers. The fact is that we are witnessing increased attention towards the Arctic, and it is the job of the Arctic states to make sure that this engagement is meaningful for all stakeholders. That's also in the Arctic states' interest in order to remain relevant.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we will take one last round through the panel, also including in some of the many excellent questions coming in from our wonderful audience. If I may start with you first, Ksenia, any last comments or concluding remarks as we wrap up? What would be your message to young people following the conference? Where should they put their effort in shaping Arctic cooperation towards 2030?
I think it should be summarized by saying the following. It should be knowledge gain, to get the necessary skill set to build the better future. It should be a cultural exchange to be able to communicate efficiently. And of course, we should focus on building up business innovations to keep up with the times. And as well as all these, we need to stay open-minded and to be open to new ideas, and also to be inspired how the world we are living in could be improved and thus become a better place to live in right now.
Thank you. I will turn to, let's continue in those gathered in Buda. A question to about the mayor of Buda. We also have here a question more specifically about plans to improve infrastructure, but this is also your chance to comment on kind of messages to youth and young people. What sorts of education or efforts should they be pursuing to participate in municipal governance in the Arctic in 2030?
Thank you so much. Oh, I could have spoken about that all day because we are actually doing pretty large things in infrastructure. But I think for the young people, I had to say that we have to believe and we have to know that we can do changes, that we can make a difference in the Arctic, and that we have to be creative people in the Arctic, and then we need you all. And here in Bodø, for example, we are now moving our runway and the airport, and we are opening a space for a new city, and we are doing that in a sustainable way. And that has been very important for us, also for young people coming here and being more interested in taking part in our developing of this city. And I think that we can do that even more in the Arctic and be in the front in the world in taking care of our local places, but in a global perspective of sustainability. So I think that for the young people, it's very important to never lose the faith that you can do a change, and that we have to do something together now for the future. And as Sinia said, knowledge and cooperation is very important in that, and be open-minded and curious about new things. And I think that is something that we are trying to do as good as we can here in Bodø, and I think we are moving forward with that mentality.
Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful answer, the combination of curiosity and knowledge needed to navigate between local settings and global politics. Anu Frederiksen, any last thoughts on your message to young people at this conference? What kind of Arctic? Please go ahead.
I would like to highlight inclusiveness. An Arctic that is inclusive of all the factors that we have discussed here today. Not just the Arctic states, but the global community. Regions, we see an emerging willingness to be involved in these discussions. Inclusive, bring in the youth, but don't forget us older people. And also inclusiveness in terms of also involving businesses.
Thank you for that message. And it's now my pleasure to turn to our participant who I think is joining from furthest away and ask Olga Nikolaeva to reflect on her message for youth and young people in this conference. And also, we received a message to you, Olga, in the chat. It said, "Dear Olga Nikolaeva, what are your hopes for the upcoming Russian Arctic Council chairmanship and its relationship with youth?" And I think I would also add in with indigenous peoples, as that relates to your organizational role. So we look forward to your concluding thoughts here.
Oh, thank you so much for the questions from the audience. I would start with that. I would like to say that Right-Bong is getting ready for the Russian chairmanship, and we have the history of 30 years of work in legislation, youth policy, and state policy in general. So we are really looking forward to share our experience. And we often get the messages like the indigenous peoples of Russia are hidden somewhere, and people around the world don't really see how we live here in Russia, up in the north. So our goal will be to show as much as possible what we have done during the last 30 years here on the basics, like on the base of our public organization. So, of course, it would be great to exchange all our thoughts on future work together with all the states in the Arctic and other organizations who are interested in the development of the Arctic. And I would like to conclude today's conversation saying that we are, the youth are we are responsible for preserving our wisdom of our ancestors. We are responsible for saving the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples. And it's very important to provide the voice of indigenous peoples and communities in all the levels. And it's amazing that such events like High North Dialogue is inviting indigenous representatives. So I would like also to thank our organizers for this opportunity, and also it would be great to have indigenous voice in other panels if Arctic is developing, so indigenous peoples should be on the first row of our work together. And one thing that I would like to say is that the youth people, especially the indigenous youth, should initiate as much questions and topics as possible on all levels, like local, regional, and federal ones. So it's, and I like the quote from the United Nations, "Nothing for us without us." And I think it's very, very accurate in all the areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think you really, that quote you mentioned will certainly stick in my mind. I would just like take this opportunity to say thank you to those of you to all of you participating in the session. Thank you to the organizers, and thank you also to the audience for sending in so many great questions. I didn't get to absolute all of them, but I hope that you can get them answered during the course of the conference. Best wishes for the rest of the day. And now we return to our moderator and the team in Buda.
Tusen tack, Elana, and greetings to the south. There's my camera, sorry. As we are talking about sustainable tourism, not sure if it's super sustainable, but I can see Hurtigruten just arriving. So that's another means of how to get to the Arctic. I really want to emphasize on what Xenia maybe said. Everything is set up in the Arctic. People just need to come here and need to come to Buda. Before the last session of today, let's recharge our attention battery and take a 45 minutes break. We need that break because afterwards we have our ambassador panels. Our moderator, Arne Åholm, is already waiting, and the ambassadors are waiting as well. So 45 minutes, let's meet here at 1:45 Central European Time, sharp. And until then, let's meet in the Arctic soonish.